Hello, this is the My Artifact episode number 3729. Today's date is 28th of November 2025. It's been almost like morning at 7:50 a.m. Alright, let's just jump into the question. Let's go. Sorry about this. Okay, yeah. I'm kind of like a need of some sort of sun because boy, it's very cold up here. Alright, yeah. Alright, first of all, what exactly is this question? Okay, yeah. Question is, what if the global trade was eliminated scarcity? Okay, what exactly is this question and what exactly is this question? Okay, so this is what if question. Okay, yeah. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always a really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like a force you to think about that reality. And when I try to think about that reality, when I try to create that reality, I'm kind of like simply utilizing my information and knowledge I've been through. And somehow it kind of like a feel really good. It's not a kind of like a sort of typical question where what is exactly 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. It's a kind of like a question where why 1 plus 3 is not 9. When you ask this question, you probably kind of like simply need what is actually meaning of 1, what is actually meaning of 3, what is actually meaning of plus, what is actually meaning of equal to and 9 and things like that. Because is this thing that now when you ask this question, now you just kind of like asking question to the question that is it exactly a question or is it what is it? Oh yeah. And that is what kind of like what if question. What if question are kind of like simply creates the reality regarding about the question and kind of like simply try to understand the question first and try to create that reality regarding about the question. And it's somehow little bit of interesting way to kind of like give the answer because it's not a kind of like a stagnant. It's not the answer would be kind of like completely relative. Okay, yeah. Disclaimer, the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's just my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying or do not seek for any kind of like information that I'm saying. Okay, yeah, it's just my opinion and opinion are subjective. Alright, yeah. Now regarding about the question says that what if the global trade was eliminated scarcity? Okay, so what exactly is this thing? What is exactly scarcity? Not scarcity, is a scarcity. Okay, what is exactly scarcity? Scarcity means like that. Okay, example. Okay, yeah, let's just say that you have a kind of like a, let's just say 10% battery remaining. Okay, yeah, and there is no charger at all and you haven't really reached the home. It kind of like a really required you almost like a 5 hour to reach the home and things like that. So when you have less than 5% of battery, you try to save that battery because who knows, you might gonna need that battery. Okay, yeah, you are kind of like a traveling, you don't really have any kind of like a charging point and things like that, you don't really have power and things like that. You try to save some sort of energy on your mobile phone. Okay, so that at least your phone should supposed to be survive till the end when you reach the home. Okay, yeah, so for that particular purpose you will not gonna listen any music, you will not gonna use any kind of like internet or Wi-Fi, you will not gonna use your mobile phone that much. You will just kind of like put your phone in kind of like a some power saving mode and you will not gonna use that particular phone for that particular period of time. Why? Because of that you need to save that particular amount of energy till the reach of your home. Okay, yeah, that is called scarcity. A scarcity means like that you are kind of like simply have a limited source and you are kind of like utilizing that limited source for particular period of time. Okay, or kind of like a significant amount of time. That is called kind of like a scarcity. Okay, yeah. Now in this world there is nothing infinite. Everything is kind of like a gone at somewhere. Everything is kind of like a whatever we have in on this planet is in limited quantity. Mineral, oil, energy, time, everything is in limited quantity. Okay, yeah. and because of it kind of like a limited quantity, we are trying to save up that particular thing for particular purposes. Okay, yeah. Let's just say oil. Okay, yeah, we have very less oil. Probably within the end of this century, we will might not have that much oil. So that's why most of the people are kind of like a switching kind of like a combustion engine vehicle to the battery electric vehicle. Okay, yeah, because electric vehicle, that kind of like some renewable energy, we can renew that energy from the solar panel, from wind and things and that. But oil, no. Oil is kind of like a some is non-renewable energy. Non-renewable energy. So it means that it kind of like end at somewhere. So yeah, so that's why we are kind of like simply try to prevent that kind of like a something that, like basically we are trying to kind of like simply is this thing that we try to eliminate the utilization of kind of like a simply for utilizing oils and gases and things and that. Okay, but the question is that what if there is no kind of like a something the scarcity, like basically is this thing, everything is unlimited. Like what do you need oil, you need gas, you need coal, you need anything, it's unlimited. Okay, yeah. So when things are unlimited, okay, yeah, let's just say money is also unlimited too, then what is exactly that particular world? Okay, yeah, might be you just kind of like bought the phone, that mobile phone battery never get drained, never will not gonna drain. Yeah, you don't really have to kind of like put your phone on charge, nothing really at all. So what you gonna do with that, like what will be that particular world? Okay, let me give you the perspective. Okay, the human evolution is actually happened is because of having limited sources. Okay, yeah, limited sources about food. Okay, yeah, we didn't really have that much amount of food since we are kind of like a something hunting and things and that, so that we kind of like a something improvise ourselves to kind of like how do we supposed to be hunt better. Okay, example, a one person cannot able to do hunt properly because it's a one person. Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing, if the one person cannot able to bring food at home, so that's why we are kind of like a gather multiple people. Let's just say 10-20 people are kind of like a going to the hunting together, and they are kind of like a bringing some sort of food. Okay, yeah. Because of like a we are failure, we are try to kind of like a somebody shifting ourselves to kind of like a change our tactics to kind of like a get something. Okay, so basically is this thing, having some sort of limited sources is kind of like a somebody, it shape us, it kind of like a somebody make us kind of like a little bit better in our point of perspective in everything. Okay, yeah. Like basically same example that I have tried to mention. Okay, if you have 10% battery left on your mobile phone, you are trying to save that battery. Okay, yeah, it kind of like a somebody, it kind of like a somebody we are kind of like a utilizing we are kind of like a utilizing this technicality in every possible scenario. And that's why we are kind of like a being really human, that we are trying to save up for something that kind of like essential for us. Okay, yeah, and that is what kind of like a being human, and that is what kind of like a some evolution and growth is actually happen. If the unlimited source are actually available, then we might not develop ourselves, or we might not improve ourselves. Example is this thing that ki in the kind of like a somebody, let's just say there are foods are everywhere. Let's just say thousands of years ago, we are kind of like a hunting for food and things like that because limited sources. But because of there is unlimited sources of food, why do we supposed to be hunt? Okay, yeah, why do we supposed to be hunt? Another thing is that if there is a unlimited sources, why do we supposed to do agriculture? Because agriculture are actually established because of having less amount of food. Because when you try to hunting, you are not really sure that you will get the food or not. Okay, yeah. But being agriculture, it kind of like a gives you guarantee that you will gonna get the food every single times. So basically this thing, agriculture is kind of like established because of having less amount of food. But in this particular reality, when you have unlimited amount of food, then probably you will not gonna do agriculture. And because of the agriculture shapes the humanity in much more better way, if the agriculture is not even established, then we might not gonna reach over here. Okay, yeah. Let's just take that. We do not go kind of like a beyond that particular thousands of year or go back. Okay, yeah. Let's just focus on today. Okay, yeah. Let's just say that since today everything is unlimited, money, resources, kind of like assembly, money, resources, material, everything is unlimited. Okay, yeah. So what you will gonna do? Take example first, money. You have unlimited amount of money. Then what you will gonna do? Well, when you have unlimited amount of money, and like not just you, but kind of like everyone has a kind of like unlimited amount of money, then what will they gonna do? There is no value of money remaining. Okay, yeah. It means what? Like let's just say that when you have kind of like a unlimited amount of money, then there is a kind of like a loss of value of that particular thing. Okay, yeah. Let's just say that I need to buy a laptop which cost me, let's just say, 1 lakh rupees. Okay, yeah. But in this particular reality, abundant amount of money is actually exist, unlimited amount of money. Then what would be the price of that one laptop? Probably million, trillion, or more than that. Why? Because of that, the money is kind of like a somebody very unlimited. Okay, yeah. So when you have unlimited thing, then how do you supposed to kind of like a show? How do you supposed to kind of like a somebody give the value to the product? Okay, let's just say if I wanted to buy a kind of like a biscuit, and if I wanted to buy a helicopter, then which will gonna cheaper and which will not? Okay, yeah, because the helicopter part are available in abundant quantity. Biscuits are actually available in abundant amount of quantity. There is no limited, unlimited. So which is cheaper? There is no cheaper at all. There is no kind of like a something like that expensive at all. Everything is kind of like a something just kind of like a something unlimited. But how is that particular possible? It's not possible, na? Example is this thing that a kind of like a car, a kind of like a normal car is actually available everywhere. Okay, yeah. But if you want a kind of like a Lamborghini or supercar, is it kind of like available in abundant quantity? No, it will not gonna available in abundant quantity. Why? Because the Lamborghini car doesn't really make abundant in quantity. Okay, yeah. So if those company are wanted to make their car in abundant quantity, what does they will gonna do? They will kind of like assembly hire so many people, and they are kind of like assembly making the car for abundant quantity. Yeah, but still, why does people will gonna work on their company? Because the money is unlimited, the food is unlimited, the everything is unlimited. Why do I supposed to kind of like assembly work in particular company? Yeah, because I have everything do I need. Why do I supposed to kind of like do a work? Right? Simple example, na? If I have so much amount of money, if I have so much amount of food, if I have everything, why would I do that? Simple example, na? Okay. So basically it's this thing, even if you have so many amount of resources and things and that, still everyone wants to kind of like a somebody supercar, but supercar cannot able to make because of there is very less amount of people are actually exist are kind of like a somebody willing to do a work in Lamborghini car. Even if the kind of like a somebody owner says I'm gonna kind of like give you trillions of dollars of salary, still people will not gonna do that work because you have trillions of dollars of the money. I also have trillions of dollars of money too, because it's an abundant amount of quantity, right? Yeah. So this is what is it? Scarcity, yeah, it is kind of like a limited sources. Some countries have kind of like some sort of bigger resources. Let's just say oil. Middle East have kind of like a lot of oil resources and things like that. And because of this thing, they kind of like simply shape their economy to oil to tourist. Okay, they know that oil will be kind of like some end at somewhere, and they wanted to switch their economy from oil dependent on oil to kind of like some tourism and things like that. That's why they build the Burj Khalifa, biggest building on the planet. They have kind of like some really good design of their cities and kind of like a really good stuff. Why is that? Because of kind of like a something is this thing, when you have limited sources, as a human are try to evolve to find a new way to survive themselves. And that is what evolution is actually comes from. Okay, yeah. Now, if I'm gonna say there is no unlimited thing, like everything is unlimited, then there is also problem. Okay, yeah. What is exactly unlimited? Okay, what is exactly unlimited? Okay, yeah. Let's just say, okay, yeah. If I'm gonna say that I have unlimited sources of everything. Okay, yeah. So what is exactly unlimited? Let's just say I wanted to make a kind of like a some spaceship, like a Star Trek spaceship. Okay, yeah. USS Enterprise. Okay, yeah. It really required a lot of amount of material, iron and things and that and that and that and that. Okay, because of I have kind of like some unlimited source of all those material, I would gonna definitely gonna make that thing. Okay, yeah. So you make one kind of like a some starship, which kind of like a some equivalent to the size of Atlantic. Okay, yeah. Atlantic Ocean, which is kind of like a far more bigger. Okay, yeah. Still you have unlimited sources, then probably you will gonna make kind of like a some starship, which is kind of like a size of planet Earth. Okay, yeah. But how is that particular possible? That particular spaceship really required kind of like a lot of material, which is kind of like a bigger than planet Earth. How is that particular possible? It's not possible, right? How that particular kind of like a material would be exist on the planet where the kind of like assembly output is kind of like a far bigger than input? It's not possible. Output is always kind of like assembly less than input. So basically this thing infinite is not even exist. Material will be in kind of like a little bit infinite in anything. Another thing is that, let's just say, even if I'm gonna say unlimited, there is still some sort of thing is limited. Time. We also have 24 hour of time. Okay, yeah. Time will not gonna be unlimited. Okay, yeah. Like I get 24 hour, everyone gets 24 hour too. Okay, yeah. So it is limited sources. Okay, yeah. Time will not kind of like some unlimited sources. Okay, yeah. So this is what it is. Like basically, if I try to imagine that, what would be that kind of like somebody that, like there is no kind of like somebody, we don't really think about the scarcity and things like that, like the entire global kind of like a perspective, kind of like a thing that ki, if the global trade is eliminate the scarcity, means like that all the kind of like some things are kind of like unlimited, then probably you just not gonna grow that much. Yeah, because the evolution supports kind of like a some scarcity. When you have little less, you're gonna get more, and that is a kind of like a some universal truth, by the way. Okay, yeah. When you have less, you get more. When you have more, you get less, and that is true. All right. I'm not gonna kind of like a somebody push even more further. You actually understand my point of perspective that I'm trying to tell you. All right. So this is it. This is done, and thank you.